Maya Ford was born on April 11, 1998, in San Diego, California. She spent her early years in a vibrant and bustling city before moving with her mother, Colleen Munson, to Stella, Missouri, a quiet, rural town with a population of under 200. Rowan's life in Stella was marked by simplicity and innocence. Known for her compassionate nature, she was a loving daughter and sister who cherished time with her family. Despite her parents' divorce when she was young, Rowan formed a close relationship with her mother and her siblings. Rowan's personality was shaped by her love for the outdoors and her artistic talents. She enjoyed drawing, a hobby that she pursued with passion and dedication, and spent much of her time riding her bike around the small town. Rowan was also an active participant in church activities, often helping younger children with their tasks. Her life was filled with the quiet joys of childhood, simple pleasures that shaped her into a kind and promising young girl. At just 9 years old, Rowan was a fourth-grade student at Stella Elementary School. She was well-liked by her peers and teachers for her bright smile, gentle spirit, and eagerness to learn. Her academic achievements and her ability to get along with everyone made her a standout student. Rowan was a girl who had so much potential, someone destined for a bright future. However, her life would be tragically cut short, and the promise of her youth would be forever lost. In the night of November 2, 2007, Rowan Ford was left alone at home while her mother, Colleen Munson, worked the night shift at Walmart. Her stepfather, David Spears, was away working on a farm, leaving Rowan to fend for herself in the quiet of their small Missouri home. Rowan, though young, was independent, and it wasn't unusual for her to be home alone during her mother's shifts. However, when Colleen returned home the following morning, she was alarmed to find that Rowan was missing. Her red bicycle, which Rowan often used to ride around the neighborhood, was also gone. At first, David suggested that Rowan might have gone to a friend's house, but when Colleen checked with the few friends Rowan had in the small town, no one had seen her. Colleen's concern grew rapidly as hours passed without any sign of her daughter. As the day unfolded, David's explanations became increasingly suspicious. Colleen, unable to find her daughter, began her own search around the neighborhood. David's accounts of the events also became inconsistent. He first claimed that Rowan had asked to sleep over at a friend's house, but then later changed his story. These inconsistencies raised questions, and Colleen's instincts told her that something wasn't right. The search continued without any leads, and the more time passed, the more the situation appeared to be one of foul play. Eventually, law enforcement was called, and the FBI joined the investigation. The case soon shifted from a missing persons case to one that suggested a more sinister truth. Rowan was not just missing. She was likely the victim of an abduction. 6 days after Rowan Ford's disappearance, on November 9, 2007, a breakthrough in the case occurred. Rowan's body was discovered in a remote area near McDonald County, Missouri, inside a cave. Her body had been hidden under leaves and debris, a tragic sight for those who had been desperately searching for her. The discovery was made in a rural area, far from the small town where she had lived, adding to the mystery and horror surrounding her disappearance. At the time of the discovery, Rowan's body was in an advanced state of decomposition. Medical examiners confirmed that the cause of death was strangulation, and further forensic investigation revealed that Rowan had been subjected to a harmful act prior to her death. This revelation brought an even more horrifying dimension to the case. Forensic evidence and the details surrounding her death led investigators to believe that her abduction and murder were not random, but rather the result of a deliberate and calculated act of violence. As news of the discovery spread, it shocked the close-knit community of Stella. The peaceful town, where children were once allowed to play outside without fear, was now faced with a chilling reality. Investigators quickly focused on two suspects, David Spears, Rowan's stepfather, and Christopher Leroy Collings, a family friend who had lived with the Ford family in the months leading up to Rowan's death. Both men were known to Rowan, and both had been in contact with her shortly before her disappearance. The discovery of Rowan's body marked a tragic turning point in the investigation. What had initially been a missing persons case had now turned into a murder investigation, and the hunt for justice began. Rowan's family, devastated by the loss, faced a long and painful road ahead as they sought answers and accountability. The investigation into Rowan Ford's death quickly revealed that her murder was not a random act, but a premeditated crime involving people close to her. Law enforcement, after analyzing the evidence, zeroed in on two primary suspects, David Spears, Rowan's stepfather, and Christopher Leroy Collings, a family friend who had lived with the Ford family during the summer and fall of 2007. Christopher Collings, who was affectionately called Uncle Chris by Rowan, initially denied involvement in the crime, but the investigation soon took a dramatic turn. Collings eventually confessed to abducting Rowan, taking her to his trailer, and subjecting her to a harmful act. He claimed that when Rowan recognized him during the assault, he panicked and strangled her to death with a coil of rope. After killing her, Collings disposed of her body in a remote cave, hoping it would never be found. David Spears, who had been living with Rowan's family and was the last person to see her before she disappeared, was also implicated in the crime. Initially, he denied any involvement, but investigators uncovered conflicting statements from him, which further raised suspicion. As the investigation progressed, David admitted to helping Collings dispose of Rowan's body. Both men's confessions came as a result of intense questioning, though their stories differed. Collings maintained that he acted alone in the murder, while David Spears insisted he was an accomplice, though not the murderer. Law enforcement pieced together the details of the crime through forensic evidence, witness testimony, and the confessions of both suspects. The arrests of both men sent shockwaves through the community. David Spears, Rowan's stepfather, had been a trusted figure in her life, and his involvement in her death was a betrayal that left Rowan's family in disbelief. Christopher Collings, once seen as a family friend, had betrayed the trust of the Ford family in the most horrific way. Christopher Leroy Collings stood trial for the first-degree murder of Rowan Ford in 2012. The trial was highly publicized due to the shocking and brutal nature of the crime. Collings had confessed to abducting, subjecting Rowan to a harmful act, and strangling her, but his defense team argued that his difficult childhood and mental health issues should be considered as mitigating factors. Despite these attempts to reduce his culpability, the jury found Collings guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to death. The prosecution emphasized the brutality of the crime, noting that Collings had killed Rowan in a panic after she recognized him, and that he had tried to cover up the murder by disposing of a body in a remote location. The prosecution also highlighted the emotional toll the crime had on Rowan's family, especially her mother, Colleen, who had trusted both Collings and David Spears. In contrast, Collings' defense team presented evidence of his troubled childhood, claiming that he had suffered from abuse and neglect, which may have contributed to his actions. They also pointed to his diagnosis of severe disorganized dissociative attachment disorder and intermittent explosive disorder as factors that played a role in his behavior. However, the jury found that these factors did not justify the severity of the crime, and they delivered a guilty verdict. Collings' sentencing to death was seen by many as a form of justice for Rowan's family. The trial provided some closure to her loved ones, but the emotional scars from her death remained. The trial also sparked wider debates on the fairness of the death penalty and whether mental illness should influence sentencing in such brutal cases. David Spears, Rowan Ford's stepfather, was initially charged with first-degree murder for his role in her death. However, in a surprising turn of events, he struck a plea deal with prosecutors. In exchange for his testimony against Christopher Collings, Spears pleaded guilty to charges of child endangerment and hindering prosecution. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, a sentence that many found to be too lenient considering his involvement in the crime. While the prosecution had initially planned to charge Spears with murder, further investigation revealed that his role in the crime was less direct than Collings. Although Spears confessed to helping Collings dispose of Rowan's body, he claimed that he was not involved in the actual murder. The prosecution, deciding to avoid the possibility of a lengthy and complicated trial, agreed to a plea deal with Spears. Public reaction to the plea deal was one of outrage. Many believed that Spears had played a more significant role in Rowan's death than he admitted, and that he should have faced harsher consequences. The disparity between his plea deal and Collings' death sentence added fuel to the fire, with many feeling that justice had not been fully served. Despite the criticism, Spears served 7 years of his sentence before being released in 2015. His release was met with mixed reactions, as many felt that he had not fully been held accountable for his actions. While the legal system had closed the case, the emotional impact of Rowan's death on her family remained, with a lingering question question of whether David Spears had truly received the justice he deserved. Christopher Collings' execution was scheduled for December 3, 2024, after a lengthy legal battle that lasted more than a decade. Throughout the years, Collings filed numerous appeals in an attempt to avoid the death penalty, but all his efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. His final appeal was rejected by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2024, paving the way for his execution. Collings' execution by lethal injection took place at the Eastern Reception Diagnostic and Correctional Center in Missouri. His last words expressed remorse for his actions, and he apologized to Rowan's family for the pain he had caused. While some saw his execution as justice served, others questioned the morality of the death penalty, particularly in cases involving mental illness or difficult childhoods. For Rowan's family, the execution provided a sense of closure, but it did not erase the pain of losing their daughter. Her sister, Ariane Max, expressed a belief that Collings deserved the death penalty for his actions, but also noted that the execution could never bring back her sister. Collings became the 23rd person to be executed in the United States in 2024. His case sparked continued debate about the use of the death penalty and its application in cases of severe crimes. While some felt that the execution was a necessary step in seeking justice for Rowan, others saw it as a reminder of the complexities and ethical dilemmas surrounding capital punishment. Rowan Ford's murder left an indelible mark on her family, her community, and the broader conversation about justice and child protection. Her death shocked the small town of Stella, Missouri, where such violent crimes were unheard of. The case became a symbol of the hidden dangers that can exist even in the most peaceful and close-knit communities. In the aftermath of Rowan's murder, her story sparked conversations about the effectiveness of the justice system, particularly in cases involving the death penalty. Many questioned whether the death penalty truly served as a deterrent for violent crimes, and whether it was appropriate in cases involving mental illness or troubled backgrounds. The case also highlighted the importance of safeguarding children and ensuring that they are protected from those who may pose a threat. For Rowan's family, her death was an unimaginable tragedy. Her mother, Colleen, and her siblings carried the weight of this loss for the rest of their lives. While Collings' execution provided some closure, it did little to ease the pain they had endured. Rowan's legacy, however, continues to live on through the memories of those who knew her. Her case also serves as a sobering reminder of the need to protect vulnerable children from harm. As discussions continue about the justice system, the death penalty, and child safety, Rowan's story remains a poignant example of the devastating impact that one person's actions can have on an entire community.